What's up? Welcome back to Nowstalgia. Dave here with a review of Beef, the new limited series out in full on Netflix from Lee Sung-jin. Uh, I was not familiar with Lee Sung-jin's work. He's a long-time staff writer in the comedy space. This is his first show he's created. But I was, of course, familiar with the two leads of this series. That would be Ali Wong and Steven Yeun. And I think Beef is spectacular. Certainly the biggest TV surprise in the year so far. Completely blew me away, exceeded every expectation. I think this is a series that never does what you expect it to do and never becomes the show you expect it to be. And on top of that, it has spectacular writing, really rich themes, excellent premise to start you off, and of course, tremendous acting. So, Beef, really my highest possible recommendation for a series. I'm going to get into all that. I'm going to spoil what happens in this 10 episode limited series, but let me just say again, love Beef. If you haven't seen it yet, watch later, bookmark this, come back, and leave a comment below. Let me know what you think once you did. But yeah, I think Beef is tremendous. So what I think, starting you off with Beef, right? Yeah, you have this premise, which is super high concept, really smart. It's two people get in a road rage incident, and they both snap equally. Of course, Ali Wong and Steven Yeun are these two people. You have Steven Yeun is Danny Cho, who's kind of like a grinding, blue collar, handyman contractor type guy, a bit down on his luck, trying to find his way in the world. And Ali Wong plays Amy Lau, who is a small business owner, very successful, wealthy woman in the process of selling her company to a bigger company and getting, like rich. And they have a road rage incident starting at a department store, like Home Depot-esque store parking lot. And there's a bit of road rage chase. Things really spiral from there, and they separate. And you think, oh, is this going to be a movie or a series a story where this road rage incident, will they get caught by the neighbors? Will one of them go against the other? What's going to happen? And it very quickly becomes so much bigger than being about this road rage incident. It's actually more about how these two people, Danny and Amy, it's really about how Danny and Amy have been these self-destructive people in their own lives. And when they chance encountered each other, they self-combusted because they both have unhappiness in their lives, and they feel resentment towards the world and society and things like that. And I think it's really just impressive how Beef is able to wield, I think, these really weighty themes and bring you in. And like I said, the show doesn't do what you expect it to do, because once you get into that, okay, it's a bit deeper than just the road rage show. However, Beef keeps adding characters and stories and supporting stories and B plots to the series that don't feel superfluous at all, but actually enrich your understanding of Beef in that core story. And I think Beef, just as a story, really builds and has a really beautiful ending, and really where it ends up in terms of what happens in the final episode, and how metaphysical some of that stuff is. Definitely, you would not have seen that coming watching the first few episodes. But again, I think everything is super earned with that. I think just as we start to meet more people in the lives of Danny and Amy, the show really blossoms. A big person, of course, would be Joseph Lee, who's an actor I'm not super familiar with. I thought he was great, though. He plays George, Amy's husband. And you learn that actually Amy has been the one grinding her whole life, finding successful business, and she's the one supporting her stay-at-home husband, who is an artist. And their relationship, we learn, is more strained than perhaps people think it should be. They have everything seemingly going for them in their lives, but Amy isn't home nearly as much to take care of their daughter Junie. George is, and there is unhappiness. There's strife there. Danny is living with his younger brother, his younger brother Paul, played by Young Mazzino, an actor I'm also unfamiliar with. He seems pretty new, and his younger brother doesn't have the same ambition and personal drive to find success and make success for oneself, at least the way Danny does, or at least the way Danny sees it and sees how you do that sort of thing. It's quite interesting. I think Korean culture is a big aspect of this, particularly on the Danny side of things. And Danny finding his way back into the Korean community and the church that he had become ostracized from, as we learn more about what happened to Danny's parents during the course of the recent past with the series. I think it's really added on in a nice way. Another important figure in the series would be Danny and Paul's cousin, Isaac, played by Dave Cho. Dave Cho, I knew him as an artist, kind of a um, eccentric figure. He does a lot of stuff in media, but really known for being an artist and I guess a writer or a expressing himself in a in that medium. I never really seen him act, certainly not dramatically act, and he definitely has a comedic uh, side to his character. But I was quite impressed with this performance from him. Um, Isaac is the older cousin of Paul and Danny, but Isaac, a bit seedier fellow. He's kind of operating on the edges of the law, export import business, having connections across LA, hustling, but you may be cutting some corners, but willing to help out Danny and Paul as well, keep it in the family. And you learn more about Isaac's relationship to the rest of the family as the show goes. Overall, again, really impressed with Dave Cho, and the characters quite fun to be with for sure. The kid, Junie, uh, uh, Amy and George's kid. I think she's like really great. Honestly, like child performances, of course, incredibly hit or miss, but really good kid. Good job. um, again, like later on, they add more layers to it. We eventually meet George's mother, Fumi, and we learn actually little bits about her life and her expectations for her son and her son's marriage, and what she is perhaps projecting onto that marriage and finding use in this marriage between her son and her son's wife, and how Amy learns about that. There's a lot of kind of like 6 degrees of separation things in terms of how characters meet one another in terms of these two sides of our story here. How Amy meets Danny's brother Paul, I think, is quite interesting, and where all of that goes is quite compelling. How Danny meets George with a fake identity, Zane, I think, is quite compelling. Layer after layer gets added to this series, and it keeps building up, and all of that's really fun in terms of who has the upper hand on the one on the other as the beef simmers, then comes back to a boil. But along the way, the I think dramatic uh, tension really ratchets up as we really kind of get into what these characters, our lead characters, feel about in terms of finding purpose and meaning in their lives. They're very different lives, but they perhaps have a similar issue in terms of finding that kind of inner peace, but also like that purpose. You know, um, as it gets there, these characters also get worse. You take your time rooting for each character in the beef, and just overall, and we spend so much time with them, and we really learn about their relationships and their personal struggles, and everything's so finely written and so richly drawn that you're really connected to these characters. And then towards the end of the series, they get exposed as even perhaps more villainous than they ever had been before. It's like, oh, they may just be terrible people to deal with, and maybe you can't relate to some of their issues and their struggles, right? These self-defeating people have done more than that, though. They have some real heinous things they've done, whether it's what happens between Amy and George's marriage, or things you learn about Danny and Paul's past, the brothers' past, in terms of what Danny may have done. Um, you really have a hard time, I think, not even picking a side, but really like sympathizing with that character. And I think it's really impressive when shows can make you so connected to the journey that a character is on, and then throw something heinous right in your face and kind of dare you to keep rooting for them, because you can't. You do not take their side in this. It's universal when you see what happens. You know, and that's what's so impressive about the series. It really ratchets up towards the end there. With the fire and the robbery attempt, the kidnapping, the deaths, really picks up. And then episode 10, almost lynching in a sense, right? Starting off with these crows, which had previously been referenced, these birds talking to oneself. And then Amy and Danny basically tripping off toxic berries you're not supposed to eat, as we all know as growing up. Um, it kind of ends in a place you don't necessarily expect it to, but really, I think the back half really hones in on those themes. I think it's a really strong LA movie as well. Amy's all up in the Calabasas hills, and Danny spending some time in Orange County, connecting back with the Korean community he had been ostracized from. All that's quite fun. The basketball scene at the Korean church is really enjoyable. Um, the Vegas episode 4, when Danny and Isaac go to track down Paul, who stole the truck, Danny's truck, which happens to have stolen construction materials that Isaac hooked up. That's really fun. Of course, being in Vegas is always fun. Um, Even some of the other supporting characters, like Naomi, who is like a fellow wealthy woman who Amy knows, but Naomi starts to piece together the origin of the road rage incident. Thinks Amy's at the Amy is one of the drivers. That's all quite fun. Yeah, I mean, I was really impressed with this series. I think there's so much. It has so much to offer. In like 5.5 hours, however long it is, and yeah, Stephen Yeun. I think people know at this point he's been on one. You know, some great supporting roles like in Sorry to Bother You and Nope last year. Of course, amazing in Minari, Oscar nominated. Steve Yeun's one of the best actors we have right now, and this is another great performance from him. He really imbues himself into Danny, and I think Danny is a character that's really hard to root for at times, but also really easy to root for at times too, and that just speaks to the writing. But I think the Yeun performance is awesome. Ali Wong is perhaps the biggest revelation, though, of the two. We know how good Stephen Yeun is in dramatic roles. We know that a lot less from Ali Wong, who, of course, is very famous for being a successful stand up comedian. She's acted before, but Always Be My Maybe was a rom com. There's comedic stuff to this, and of course, Ali is able to do some really funny line deliveries, and she has the mannerisms on her and expressions on her face. Like, she can handle the comedy when it comes up on Beef, but it was a really impressive dramatic turn from her as well. And it's awesome to see actors do something new like that, but especially someone like Ali Wong, has not been a full time actor really at all. So hats off to them. Like I said, I thought the Dave Cho performance really comes out of nowhere. It's awesome. Yeah, man. Beef, highest possible recommendation. I hope this does well for Netflix. It's not going to be as well watched as The Night Agent, but it certainly deserves to be. And I would expect Netflix to campaign this heavily for the Emmys this fall. But yeah, let me know. How did you like Beef? Did it surprise you like it surprised me? What was your favorite part about Beef? There's so much to it. And for more TV reviews, subscribe, and I'll see you next time.